Fleet Commander Daxar had raided 47 human merchant vessels in 6 years, and none of them had ever surprised him. He ran the recognition software against the convoy's profile and let the results confirm what his instincts already told him. 8 Terran merchant freighters of the standard heavy transport class, laden to their maximum weight rating based on drive emissions, traveling the Helion-Voss trade corridor with 2 light patrol escorts that would fold the moment they saw what he was bringing. The cargo manifests, pulled from the public freight exchange that human merchants used to advertise their hauls, listed rare mineral concentrates, processed agricultural stock, and precision manufacturing components. Resistance potential, negligible. Signal the escorts to stand down or be destroyed, Daxar told his communications officer. Close to boarding range on all 8 vessels simultaneously. I want this finished in 4 hours. His 6 raider ships crossed the 3,000-kilometer threshold in good order. On the bridge of the lead merchant freighter Steady Commerce, a woman in a faded blue commercial captain's jacket reviewed the same approach data on a display that was considerably more sophisticated than the equipment her ship was supposed to carry. She had been sitting in this chair as this particular version of herself for 4 years. She had genuine commercial relationships in 11 systems. Her cargo manifests were real. Her trade records were accurate and profitable. The coffee in her hand had been made 12 minutes ago in the ship's galley by a man who had won 3 culinary competitions before he agreed to this assignment. They're at boarding range, her first officer said. He was listed in the ship's registry as a navigation specialist, which was accurate in the way that many things about Steady Commerce were accurate, true in every detail that could be verified from the outside. All 8? She said. All 8. She set down her coffee. Open a channel to the convoy, all ships. She waited for the confirmation light. This is Captain Vasquez. Prepare to receive. Aboard Steady Commerce's main cargo bay, a woman who had been peeling root vegetables at a prep station for the past 40 minutes heard the words through her earpiece. Set down the peeling knife with the specific unhurriedness of someone who is not in a hurry, because there is nothing to be in a hurry about, and looked toward the cargo bay's main access hatch. 90 seconds later, a Vorkai boarding team cut through the hatch and entered. The bay looked exactly like a merchant ship's cargo bay. Stacked containers, cargo netting, the smell of processed agricultural goods. The woman with the peeling knife was the closest person to the hatch. The rest of the crew were at various stations doing various things that looked extremely routine. The boarding team's commander looked at the woman with the peeling knife. She looked back at him. Took you long enough, she said. Then every light in the cargo bay went red. The Vorkai boarding commander's training covered 23 categories of unexpected resistance. It did not cover the specific experience of watching a cargo bay full of apparent civilians produce weapons from concealment positions with the fluid efficiency of a military unit that had been rehearsing this exact moment for months. Because they had been. The boarding team was subdued in 11 seconds. Not killed, constrained, weapons removed, secured along the bay's rear wall with the professional calm of soldiers who have very specific instructions about prisoner treatment. Petty Officer First Class, Elena Marchetti, Special Forces Reconnaissance on assignment as a culinary specialist for the past 3 years and 2 months, secured the boarding commander personally. She was polite about it. Stay seated, she told him. The way she said it communicated that this was not a suggestion. Outside, Steady Commerce was becoming something else. The process had been tested 140 times in simulation and 11 times in live exercises in the Accord's most isolated testing systems. False hull sections along the ship's midsection separated from concealment brackets and fell away, exposing weapons batteries that had been running cold under the cargo freighter's power signature for 4 years. Torpedo bays opened in positions that had appeared to every inspection Steady Commerce had ever undergone as structural reinforcement members. The fighter bay, hidden in what looked like a double-walled aft cargo compartment, opened its doors for the first time in live deployment. All 8 ships ran the same sequence. The time from red light to full weapons deployment, 44 seconds. Fleet Commander Daxar watched 6 of his ships get destroyed in the 90 seconds that followed. Not damaged, not disabled, destroyed, caught at 3-kilometer boarding range by weapon systems designed specifically for close engagement work, firing from 8 directions simultaneously. The 7th ship lost its drives and went dark. The 8th managed to increase range to 8 kilometers before 3 torpedoes caught up with it. The channel that opened on the Vorkai command frequency used the encryption code his ships used between each other, a code that human forces were not supposed to have. Fleet Commander Daxar, this is Vice Admiral Mira Vasquez, Terran Navy Q Fleet. You are at weapons range of 8 Q-class warships. All of your remaining functional vessels are targeted. I am offering you 30 seconds to cut your drives. Your boarding teams are alive and in custody. Use the time well. Daxar cut his drives in 11 seconds. The answer he needed came 14 hours later, when a Terran intelligence officer sat across from him in a secure compartment and explained the part he was cleared to know. His fleet had not been ambushed. It had been invited. The intelligence his command structure received about the convoy's position, route, and cargo had been accurate in every detail, because it had been prepared by Terran intelligence specifically to be accurate, to be given to Vorkai Raider Command, and to describe a convoy that looked like the most attractive target in the Helion-Voss corridor. The cargo was real. The trade records were real. The ships were real. The intelligence officer paused. The ships were just not what they appeared to be. Q-ships, Daxar said. The word existed in Vorkai military intelligence briefings as a historical footnote from human naval warfare centuries old. A theoretical concept. You brought back Q-ships. We never stopped, the intelligence officer said. And that was the part Daxar was cleared to know. The rest was being absorbed simultaneously by the Vorkai High Command, which had just received a report, categorically different from any they had received before. Of all human merchant vessels registered in Vorkai space, operating out of 47 Vorkai ports, running established commercial routes through Vorkai territory, they did not know which ones were Q-ships. They had records. They had inspection logs. They had 6 years of commercial data. None of it was reliable anymore. The Q-ship program had been running for 31 years. The decision had been made in the aftermath of the Vorkai's first systematic raider campaigns. Not in response to the worst of the raids, but in response to the first one. The first attack on an unescorted human merchant vessel, in year 2231, had killed 14 people. The Terran Council had responded with diplomatic protests, sanctions, and military posturing that the Vorkai assessed as insufficient to constitute a real threat. They had been correct. The Council had also, in a classified session that remained sealed for 25 years, authorized the construction of the first Q-ships, not as an immediate weapon, as an infrastructure project. 20 vessels, built over 5 years, crewed by military personnel who would genuinely do commercial work for as long as necessary. The logic was simple and patient. If the Vorkai were going to use human commercial vessels as targets, human commercial vessels needed to become dangerous. Not all of them. That would be detectable. A specific, carefully selected fraction, embedded in the genuine commercial fleet, indistinguishable from the real thing because they were, in every measurable way, real. By year 2262, there were 200 Q-ships operating throughout Vorkai space with genuine commercial relationships in 47 Vorkai systems. Trade records spanning decades. Some had been boarded and inspected by Vorkai customs officials multiple times and passed every inspection, because the weapon systems were concealed behind bulkheads that registered as structural reinforcement on any scanner calibrated to Terran merchant standards. And the inspectors used Terran merchant standards because the ships were registered as Terran merchants. The 31-year deception was the longest in human military history. The minefield around the convoy's position had been seeded over the past year by one of the Q-ships operating as a geological survey vessel. The survey ship had a genuine geological survey contract with a Vorkai extraction company that had hired it for its sensor equipment. Its sensor equipment had produced excellent survey data. It had also, on 14 separate survey passes, deployed mine packages disguised as geological marker buoys. When Daxar's distress signal prompted Vorkai High Command to dispatch a response fleet, the response fleet's navigators plotted a course through what their charts showed as a clear approach corridor. The mines were not on any Vorkai chart. The response fleet's commander, assessing the mine pattern, understood immediately that placement required a vessel operating in this region for an extended period. Someone his command structure had allowed to operate freely in Vorkai space had been turning these corridors into kill zones for months. He transmitted a request for information to High Command. How many human vessels had surveyed this region in the past 18 months? The response arrived 40 minutes later. It was a list. The commander looked at the list for a long time. "Which of these are we certain are genuine merchants?" he transmitted back. The response came in 11 minutes. "We are currently assessing." This was not an answer. On Vorkai Prime, Fleet Marshal Gethvor was not looking at the response fleet's situation. He was looking at his orbital defense network's sensor readout, which showed him something that should not be possible. Admiral Chen Long's fleet had been running in stealth for 93 days. Not the stealth systems the Vorkai knew about. Human stealth had been upgraded twice in the past decade, specifically designed to defeat the passive detection arrays the Vorkai had acquired through intelligence channels. The Vorkai had been given specifications for human stealth systems. The specifications were accurate. They described human stealth systems from 8 years ago. Qianlong's fleet dropped out of stealth at 40,000 kilometers from Vorkai Prime, with the timing of people who had been waiting for Gethvor's best fleet group to be somewhere else. 1,200 warships. Gethvor activated the planetary defense network. Qianlong's fleet did not attack Vorkai Prime. They attacked the Vorkai shipyards, not to destroy them. The operation was precisely calibrated, disabling weapon systems, neutralizing defense platforms, eliminating the shipyard's military capability, without destroying a single construction bay, without damaging a single hull under construction. The shipyards were being taken intact. "What do you want?" Gethvor transmitted. Qianlong's response came from a face Gethvor recognized. The human admiral had been in Vorkai intelligence briefings for years. "The same thing our merchants always wanted," Qianlong said. "To trade, just on better terms." The Vorkai Emperor had authorized the stealth negation program in year 2257. It was presented as a counter to the growing capability gap in human detection technology, a system that could identify and broadcast the location of any vessel running human stealth protocols. The development program had taken 4 years and considerable resources. The technology worked by identifying the specific quantum signature produced by human stealth field generators and amplifying that signature to detectable levels. Tested against captured human stealth systems and verified against 2 interdicted human intelligence vessels, it functioned exactly as designed. The Vorkai had been given the quantum signature profile by an intelligence asset they had spent 11 years developing, a human technical contractor with access to military procurement data, passing information to the Vorkai since year 2251. The contractor had been identified by Terran counterintelligence in year 2253. She had been approached by Terran intelligence in year 2253. She had been working for Terran intelligence since year 2253, passing quantum signature profiles accurate for human stealth systems up to year 2252. The stealth negation device aboard the Vorkai cruiser, Absolute Authority, worked perfectly. It identified and broadcast the position of every human stealth system it encountered, loudly, on a specific frequency range its designers had selected because it was outside standard human military monitoring parameters. It was not outside the monitoring parameters of human military systems built after year 2253. Every activation of the Absolute Authority's negation system announced the Absolute Authority's own position on a frequency that 6 specific ships in Qianlong's fleet were calibrated to receive. Qianlong had been waiting for that activation for 6 months. The 6 ships arrived at the Absolute Authority's position 53 seconds after it fired. In the convoy's operational area, the engagement had been running in humanity's favor for 11 hours, when a Vorkai heavy cruiser running dark on a trajectory that bypassed the minefield emerged from a position Vasquez's tactical display had assessed as clear. It was a good maneuver. Someone on the Vorkai side was very good. Steady Commerce took the hit on its starboard weapons section. The false hull, the hull that was still, technically, the registered hull of a merchant freighter named Steady Commerce, absorbed part of the impact. The weapons systems behind it absorbed the rest. Half of Vasquez's weapons capability went offline. The second hit 30 seconds later took out the primary fighter bay. "Shields at 60%, her systems officer said. "Course options? The cruiser is between us and the convoy formation. If we break hard starboard, we expose the data core." The convoy's complete operational data was stored aboard Steady Commerce because Vasquez had designed it that way. Every Q ship in the convoy had fragment data. portions of the broader intelligence picture. Only the flagship carried the complete file: names, positions, routes, and covers of all 200 Q ships currently operating in Vorkai space. 31 years of the most sensitive operation in Terran military history. If that data was captured, if steady commerce was boarded by Vorkai forces who understood what they were looking at, the entire Q fleet program could be compromised. Not just the convoy. All of it. Vasquez had accepted this risk when she designed the operation. She had made the judgment that the safest place for the data was wherever she was, because she would make the decision about its disposition if it came to that. It was coming to that. The Vorkai cruiser was turning for a boarding approach. They had identified the command vessel. They wanted what was on it. Options, she said. Her tactical officer gave her 3. She discarded 2 immediately. The third was not in any standard military playbook. It was something that only made sense because steady commerce was, technically, still a registered merchant vessel. She activated the ship's emergency distress beacon, not the military distress system, the civilian one, the one that had been part of the original merchant vessel's equipment, maintained alongside the military systems because removing it would have been a detectable change to the ship's registered profile. The civilian distress beacon broadcast on the standard merchant emergency frequency, monitored by all vessels in the area, including Vorkai vessels, who were obligated by the Treaty of Calith-Voss to respond to civilian distress signals. The Vorkai cruiser slowed. The Treaty of Calith-Voss was a commercial shipping agreement the Vorkai had signed 40 years ago, with a provision requiring response to civilian distress signals that the Vorkai had inserted themselves as a diplomatic tool. A combat captain following combat protocol. A merchant distress signal created a legal and diplomatic situation requiring a different response, one requiring, at minimum, verification. The verification window was 37 seconds. 37 seconds was enough for what Vasquez needed. Thomas Herrera had been a cook for most of his adult life. He had cooked on merchant vessels for 11 years before the Vorkai raiders destroyed Convoy 7. He had lost his wife and daughter in the attack. They had been on the third vessel, which hadn't reached its escape pods. He had been on the first vessel, which had been boarded before the attack and from which he had watched through a cargo bay window. What happened to the third? He had spent 6 months in survivor therapy afterward. 3 months after that, in Terran Navy recruitment and screening, he had told the interviewers exactly why he was there and exactly what he wanted. The interviewers had made extensive notes and asked if he was willing to wait. Not months, but possibly years. He had been willing to wait. He had been assigned to steady commerce as the ship's culinary specialist. He was genuinely an excellent cook. The crew had appreciated this. It gave him something specific and useful to do for 4 years while he waited for the moment that was now happening on the bridge above him. He had not been involved in the distress beacon maneuver. He had not been involved in any of the combat operations. His assignment was the galley, and he had stayed in the galley during the engagement, cooking, in the specific way that some people respond to extreme stress by continuing to do the thing they know how to do. He had also been watching the ship's status displays, the civilian ones mounted in the galley for crew comfort during extended operations. He knew about the data core. Vasquez had not kept that from her crew. He also knew about one system the military planners had not included in the Q-ship's operational package, because it was not a military system. Every merchant vessel registered in the Terran commercial fleet carried a mandatory deadman data package, a system that, if the ship's registry was not confirmed at regular intervals, transmitted the ship's complete operational data to the Commercial Registry Authority. The system existed to prevent insurance fraud. It was a civilian commercial system with no military relevance, and the Q-ship program's planners had kept it because removing it would have made steady commerce non-compliant with civilian registry requirements. The deadman package transmitted on civilian channels that Vorkai military systems did not actively monitor. Herrera reached the bridge during the 37 seconds of the distress beacon's verification hold. He did not have military authority. He had civilian authority. Specifically, the authority that the ship's registered civilian personnel had over the ship's civilian systems. A technical distinction nobody had thought to remove during the Q-ship conversion. He told Vasquez what he was going to do. She looked at him for exactly 2 seconds. "Do it," she said. The deadman package transmitted steady commerce's complete operational data, encoded with the registry access codes for all 200 Q ships, to a receiver Herrera had selected. Not the commercial registry authority. Not a Terran military channel. The Vorkai cruiser's boarding team would be looking for Terran military transmissions. It went to a commercial shipping broker in the Vorkai port of Ketsavar, a broker who had been operating there for 11 years. A broker currently registered as commercial agent for 14 human merchant vessels in Vorkai space. A broker whose identification would show to any Vorkai check as a licensed commercial intermediary in good standing. The signal was received by the Q-ship docked in Ketsavar's Commercial Bay 7, an ore carrier that had been running legitimate commercial routes for 6 years, whose crew had been waiting, for 6 years, for exactly this contingency. The data was secured. The Vorkai cruiser, completing verification of the distress beacon, resumed its boarding approach, and found that Steady Commerce's remaining weapon systems were targeting it at ranges those systems should not have been able to cover. Vasquez had not been showing everything she had left. Gethvor's surrender offer came 3 hours later, transmitted from his disabled flagship. He proposed his personal surrender, and the surrender of his remaining functional vessels in exchange for the safety of Vorkai Prime and the suspension of Q-fleet operations in Vorkai space. Vasquez received the offer. She was considering the terms when Specialist First Class Yonha Park, 3 years aboard as a cargo logistics specialist, came to her with something that had just been decoded from the Concordance intelligence stream. "The source of the tip that sent Gethvor's fleet here," Park said. "We have identification." Vasquez waited. "It's not human, it's Vorkai. A senior analyst in their military intelligence, a member of a faction that's been operating inside the hegemony for 20 years, working toward a specific outcome." "What outcome?" "They wanted the hegemony to attack us. Specifically, they wanted us to win." Park set the file on the table. "They believe the Vorkai Empire needs to lose a war to force internal reforms. They've been trying to engineer the right conflict for 2 decades. They call themselves the Renewal Faction." Vasquez looked at the file. "They sent Gethvor's fleet to our Q-ships," she said. "Yes, sir. We set up Gethvor. The Renewal Faction set up the political conditions that made Gethvor do exactly what we needed him to do." Park paused. "We weren't the only ones playing a long game." Gethvor's formal surrender was accepted at 0700 Standard Time, 14 hours after the engagement began. The ceremony was conducted in Steady Commerce's cargo bay, the same bay where the boarding party had entered 14 hours earlier, where the food prep station still held a cutting board with unfinished root vegetables on it. Vasquez had chosen the location deliberately. The bay still showed the marks of the boarding team's entry, the cut hatch, the residue of 11 seconds of very efficient work, and then nothing else, because the rest of the engagement had not touched this space. Gethvor looked at the cutting board for a long time before he signed. "The cook," he said. "Our cook," Vasquez said. "Among other things." The terms were not what the Vorkai military expected from a victorious force. No territorial demands, no reparations designed to crush the Vorkai economy. No forced military reduction that would leave the hegemony vulnerable to its other neighbors. The terms were simpler and in some ways more significant. The Raider program ended. All Vorkai military operations targeting human commercial traffic ceased permanently, with an enforcement mechanism built into the terms. The Q-ships. The 200 Q-ships throughout Vorkai space would remain in place. They would continue operating as merchants, genuine merchants, running genuine trade, maintaining the commercial relationships built over 31 years. They would be disclosed to the Vorkai government's Treaty Compliance Office, which would know they existed but would not know which specific vessels they were. The ambiguity was not an oversight. It was the deterrent. Every Vorkai military commander who ordered an attack on human commercial traffic would do so, knowing that the target might be a Q-ship. Every raider who approached a human merchant vessel would make that approach knowing the same. The program's existence, known but its composition unknowable, made every human merchant vessel in Vorkai space effectively armed. The threat was real, the deployment was real, and the uncertainty was the weapon. The meeting with the Renewal Faction's representative took place 4 days later, in the ore carrier docked in Ketsavar's Commercial Bay 7, the ship that had received Herrera's transmission, that had been running a legitimate ore route for 6 years, that had been waiting 6 years for exactly that message. The representative was a Vorkai analyst named Thesvar, who had visited the ore carrier's galley on 3 separate occasions over the past year, discussing cargo logistics with the commercial broker who worked from the ship's office. Vasquez met with him for 2 hours. 20 years, she said at some point. 22, Thesvar said. Since before you started building Q-ships. You knew about the Q-ships? We suspected the program. We found evidence 8 years ago. We chose not to report it. He paused. We needed the hegemony to lose a war. 22 years of internal argument produced nothing. We needed something external, something decisive. He paused again. We did not know the extent of what you were capable of. We understood you were capable of enough. You set Gethvor up, she said. We made his decision easy for him to make. He was going to attack a merchant convoy eventually. We ensured he attacked the right one. The renewal faction's request was formal. In the normalization process, in the political restructuring that was coming inside the Vorkai hegemony, the Terran Accord's explicit support for the reform process would make those reforms viable in ways that decades of internal argument had not managed. Vasquez transmitted the request to the Terran Council. The Council's response arrived in 6 hours. Yes. Thomas Herrera made his last meal aboard Steady Commerce 2 weeks after the engagement, a dinner for the full crew in the cargo bay, at a table set up in the exact spot where the boarding team had entered. The cut hatch was still visible overhead. Vasquez had decided to keep it. After dinner, she found Herrera in the galley cleaning up. You know I can't put what you did in the official record, she said. The dead man package will have to document it as a standard data security protocol. I know, Herrera said. I can tell you what it accomplished. The data is secure. 200 ships are still in place. The program continues. She paused. Because of a civilian system nobody thought to remove from the registry, operated by a man who used to cook on a merchant vessel. Herrera finished wiping down the prep surface and set the cloth aside. I was a merchant, he said. We carry things. We carry them from one place to another and we make sure they get there. That's what merchants do. He looked at her. I carried the data. That's all. Vasquez looked at him for a moment. That's all, she agreed. The Terran Council's official statement on the Q-Fleet program described it as a 31-year investment in the security of human commercial interests throughout the sector. Accurate technically. It omitted several things the Council felt didn't require public elaboration. It omitted the renewal faction. It omitted Thomas Herrera. It omitted the fact that 200 ships were still out there, still running trade routes, still arriving on schedule. The Vorkai, who had spent 31 years believing they knew what human merchant vessels were, had learned something their military doctrine had not included. Merchants were not the opposite of soldiers. The same qualities that made someone willing to take a ship into unfamiliar space, to build relationships in foreign ports, to make a commitment and keep it regardless of conditions. Those qualities, properly directed, made something else. Something that could wait for years, could maintain a cover, could do the work and hold the position, and when the moment came, could transform. The Vorkai raider who had boarded Steady Commerce and found a woman setting down a peeling knife had not understood what he was looking at. He had been looking at exactly what she appeared to be, a merchant. Completely, authentically, a merchant. Just not only a merchant. The distinction, the thing the Vorkai had missed for 31 years, was that a merchant who is also prepared to fight is not a merchant pretending to be a soldier. A merchant who is also prepared to fight is the most dangerous thing in any port. They had been warned. Every light in the cargo bay had gone red.